Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in e-discovery and related areas. Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President, Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select Resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live Cast. Our guest this week is Suzanne Clark, Discovery Counsel at eDiscovery Co-Counsel, where she works as Discovery Counsel alongside with Merits Counsel. She's been there since 2017. She also is a member of EDRM's Global Advisory Council. In the past, Suzanne has been, among other things, an associate professor at Cumberland School of Law, a board member of the ACEDS Jacksonville chapter, an associate at a couple different law firms, and I think she's had a few things going on her own in terms of software development and the like, and at one point was a mediator, part of the Florida Supreme Court Certified Circuit Civil Mediator Program. Suzanne is a double Gator with both undergraduate and JD degrees from the University of Florida. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, George. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. Before we dive into the things you do with eDiscovery, the tools you use and the like, tell me a little bit about what it really means to be Discovery Counsel working with Merits Counsel. What you do in your day job here.
Okay, I'd love to. It's not something I envisioned when I graduated law school in 2002. So to me, I feel like it's a new area of law, a new practice of law. What we do at our firm is we connect as co-counsel with Merits Counsel on plaintiff side, typically mass torts, personal injury cases. Chad Roberts is the owner of the firm, and he was a personal injury attorney for decades and got bitten by the eDiscovery bug, as we like to say. And he realized that there was, somewhat of a dearth of eDiscovery on plaintiff side. Because you're not dealing with clients that you can call up and say, hey, how is this IT system working and this and that. So he created this firm, and I was able to join him. And what we do is, I think in large defense firms, usually somebody falls into being the discovery counsel. And then that firm knows to call that attorney at their firm whenever they have e-discovery issues. Well, for plaintiffs' firms that might just have a handful of attorneys, nobody's really going to get that role. I mean, it happens sometimes, but often it does not. So this way, these firms are essentially able to share us as a resource in a way. It makes them a scalable resource. And when they have a large case that has a large volume of data, they're able to bring us in just on an as-needed basis. And we'll say, turn up the volume, turn down the volume, scale us as needed. So does that answer your question of the vision of the firm? Do you want to know what I do all day?
Yes, it does. I'm curious about one part of that. There will certainly be matters where there's one plaintiff's firm involved, but there are plenty of matters with multiple plaintiffs' firms, and we're quite likely no one of those firms has someone with your level of e-discovery expertise. So if they bring you on board, how do they share you across the multiple firms if they do?
That's a good question. Usually you have a leader. So you'll have the plaintiff steering committee, and then you'll have a leader on that committee. And that would be typically who we would be definitely connected with. We also use platforms for collaboration, like SharePoint, or we work with we work with the e-discovery vendors, and so often everybody will be logging into the same platforms and things like that. So we these steering committees always have weekly or bi-weekly meetings. So I get plugged into those because I'm going to be the bridge between merits counsel and, say, contract reviewers or paralegals or anybody that's doing work on the documents and discovery. So we just have it kind of depends on the different matters. And so, but yeah, we'll find collaborative tools to work together.
And I'm much more familiar with how it's handled from the defense side. There have been situations where I or people like me would be retained by a single firm, but available only to that firm, retained by a single firm and available as a shared resource across multiple firms, and then retained by the group where they would pool funds and pay for someone like me out of those funds. Is it essentially the same thing on the plaintiff side?
Yes. Yes, I've had it in the past where they had a joint bank account they used, and our agreement was with the entire committee, and our invoices would be paid through that. And then we have other times where we're with one firm and they need to be looped in anytime somebody else is asking us, because while behind the scenes they're sharing costs, they want to know because they're ultimately in a contractual relationship with us. And then, so yes, all three of those.
Okay, I'd like to turn to the tools you use to get your job done in e-discovery. And let's start, of course, with one that you use quite frequently, the story engine. Tell us a bit about what you're using and how you're using it.
Okay, I'll just get into the weeds and practical on what I do in my job. Yes. So what happens is that I'm just this extra, like I said, new discovery counsel. I wear so many hats that might have been worn by, okay, we'd have the paralegal do this, we'd have an associate do that, the partner would do this. And what happens is those different people delegate to me to get me to help them. So one of my favorite things to do, because I feel like it's the most impactful in the litigation, and I did go to law school. So, it makes me feel like I'm right in there with motion filing and drafting, is when there is a motion that needs to be filed, and there's one particular associate that I have a wonderful working relationship with, where if he'll say, okay, I am going to be drafting this motion, whatever it is, and this is the case law I'm going to be using, and these are the points I want to make. Can you find me documents for each of these bulleted points? And whether or not I can actually impacts his arguments and things like that, because if they exist, great. If they don't, it's just the facts. I'm all about what I do it's the facts. You go be the gray area manipulator of these facts in your motion. So my first stop on that train, when that assignment has been given to me, is Story Engine. And I will go into Story Engine and I will say, okay, I probably already know the data somewhat because I've been working on the matter, and now we have a motion coming up. And I will say, he's looking for this. How can I prove that? And I'll start typing, and I'll think of keywords myself. And with and so I just go and dive right in. So in Story Engine, I'll start to get suggestions auto-populated out. If I'm doing if we're responding to a motion to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction and I'm looking for context with a forum, I can start to type a state name. And what's going to happen is the state name will pop up and I can automatically get a search on that. Or, the name of the state in a hospital, or the name of the state in a university, or whatever is in my data. It acts like Google, right? And it starts to auto-populate. What do we think she wants? What does the system, the artificial intelligence, think I want? Now, I'll see misspellings of names. If I'm looking for certain people, I'll see nicknames. All of that will just pop up for me. So I am typically the receiving party. which means I don't go talk to Robert Jones and interview him and say, do your colleagues call you Bob, or Bert, or, RJ, things like that.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't get to talk to them. So the system is doing that for me, where it's letting me know about the content of the data set and the people in the data set. So, I mean, that's just one very narrow little way I use it. There's so many other ways. I can limit by date ranges. I can play a video of the communications over time and see where the spikes are actually flowing across my screen. I love the way that it shows the interrelations of custodians. So that's another thing I do, is just go in and go, tell me about this person. I get an email. I just read about this person. I don't think we have asked for that person's custodial file. Tell me what you know about them from what we have. I can pull up their business card, which is their signature line, their business card over time, showing promotions and what they were doing at different times, who their key communicators were, who else they were communicating with, so that we can say, okay, well, they're just like this person, and we probably already have all their data because, or not. And see, like, sentiment analysis. When did they have tenuous conversations, and when did they have out of normal business hour conversations, and so that if I want to just drill in on those and just get an idea for anything that we might need to know about them, and I can give a report back in about 10 minutes.
Right.
And then we can just it's not doc review of, well, let me pull their file, let me search out their email address and start reading documents. I mean, we can do that if we decide they're important enough.
So this really helps you cut to the chase and get at what you're looking for much more quickly, it sounds like.
Yes. And I want every attorney to be able to go in and get their stuff without needing teams and teams of people. When you are at the level of drafting a motion in court or preparing for deposition, yes, when you're doing responsive, non-responsive review, you need legions of people, and you need to be able to organize that well. And that's a whole nother area that is under a hat I wear. But I want attorneys to know there are tools for you where you can go and do it yourself in a way, or get somebody like me, but that's just one person, right? Mm-hmm. And it's about, I think another thing about Discovery Council that came to my mind is it's the collaborative team. Like I said, when I was saying how I have this great relationship with this associate, I also have this wonderful relationship with a project manager. These are people that aren't at my firm, right? But they're colleagues, and we're working together, and we have camaraderie, and we are a go team, let's win this. We're all in it together. It's kind of like being in a sports team together,
Mm-hmm.
So like, you're the defense, I'm the offense, but we're working together.
Yeah, so some of the things that I imagine you would try to use tools like this for would be, if you're trying to show, for example, context with a specific forum, if there's a motion to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction or something like that. Right. Does it help for things like that?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So, and that goes in line with what I was saying, with getting the bullet points spelled out of when I'm going to be making my argument to the court, or when my co-counsel is going to be making their argument to the court. They've researched the case law, and they are seeing, what the particular forum, like that court, is looking for minimum contacts. And then this is a statement I'd like to make. I want to back this up with documentary evidence. So yes, then I can go in and I can say, this would prove that. And I will go find that in the documents if it exists. And it may or may not, but my co-counsel will be able to quickly see where they have what they need and where it's lacking, and if they need to find other ways to prove those points.
So unlike a sort of a generalized review for relevance or privilege, this sounds like a situation where you've got a very narrow targeted objective, and you're not trying to find each and every email message, word processing document, whatever it might be, that has something in it that is related to that issue. You're trying to find some key pieces that are really going to pack a punch to make a point.
It's evidence. It's practice of law. I mean, it's why we're here. Another thing I do is identify gaps in productions, because that's everybody's nightmare when they're the receiving party. That no matter how much I get trained in e-discovery, is my counterpart on the other side of the V properly identifying and preserving and collecting and reviewing and producing electronically stored information? And I've had people ask, how do we know we're getting it all? We don't, and we don't have to. We are entitled to a reasonable, defensible production coming into us. And I use tools to identify when that's not going on. At that point, we can get 30B6 depositions for the person who knows the most about the information systems. If we, because we ask for that at the beginning of cases and we get protective orders, and it's a huge, but if you start to identify gaps, and what do we always say in e-discovery? Don't just go complain to the judge, show the judge. Mm-hmm. Don't just say, this is volumes of data. It's to the moon and back. It's going to cost us this much. You'd say, Judge, this is how much it is, even when we use these tools. So we can say, Your Honor, we're not just suspecting this. We have a gap in this state range. Was that a custodian on leave? We'd like to know, or we've been told this custodial file was destroyed because of the records management policy. However, we have documents from this custodian who also left the company from that time period. So may we please have a copy of the records management policy so that we know whether or not it was followed throughout the litigation. Things like that, and the reason why we want a copy of it.
So I imagine there are situations where or you strongly suspect there's a gap of some sort. And that's relatively easy to figure out. But what about the situations where you just don't know what sort of gaps you want to be looking for? How do you look for gaps there?
Well, there are many ways. And one is that it's incorporated into our workflow for document review, because we do have the level of document review as a service that we provide, where, and sometimes we bring in contract attorneys, sometimes we're able to handle it ourselves internally. Sometimes we train associates at, if you have multiple firms and the firms are saying, well, we're gonna add associate time to our investment in this project. We're training associates. So we will create a workflow for document review where while you're reviewing, we could have a field with choices for production deficiency. And is that, the text didn't come through, or there's redactions that are inappropriate, or they can add choices. So as they start to identify things, missing metadata, that's something I can usually get at the front end. But if we dive right into review and we start to see we're not getting the dates of these documents, things like that, and we may need them sooner than we get them back from the other side. So we might enter a manual date field, things like that, so that they can do that while they're coding.
So those are situations where, as the reviewers are going through the documents, they identify what appear to be gaps, and then you can, having identified that potential gap, dig in and try to figure out what's there. So
I can pull reports to the production efficiency field and start to see the volume of the different, if you've got a team of reviewers, somebody might create a choice and it gets marked once, but somebody might create a choice and then the other reviewers see that choice and say, oh, I've been seeing that too. Mm-hmm. And then I start to see the save, search, fill in with, okay, now we've got 50 documents with this problem. Then I can go in and look for it on the back end.
Yep. I would imagine you can also use things like timelines and communications maps to try to identify the, if you will, the missing constellations. So we live in the northern hemisphere. We look up at the sky and we identify constellations by the stars we see. We were in, we had the great fortune to spend nearly a month in Australia many years ago. And when we were in the red center, one of the people we were with pointed out to us southern constellations. And those are composed, you know, there are, of course, the constellations we're used to, but they had something very different. I think they're Aboriginal. They are the constellations, if you will, the shapes in the sky formed by the places where there are no stars.
Mm.
The gaps there.
Yeah.
And it's a roundabout way of asking, what do you do to look for those gaps?
So you identify patterns, groupings of things, and you know, sometimes it's manual and sometimes it's using the tool, and it can be, you know, it can just be there. We're missing the speaker notes from this document. Okay, so I'm going to find similar documents and see if we have another copy, because, you know, they may have sent us the actual PowerPoint and then they had also had it print to PDF on their, you know, computer. So I'm saying I want to make sure we have the actual PowerPoint, and I'll find similar and group them all together. You know, you compare other like documents to see where, so say you have meeting minutes that are, they use the same format over and over and over and over every week or every month. Then, you know, you start to, you gather all the meeting minutes together and you start to say, this is where the attendees were, these are the topics they always talked about, and then you can see if something's missing or maybe something was removed or, you know, or something like that. And you know, that stuff can go on, the more nefarious stuff, which I don't, usually I find it is just mess ups, negligence type thing.
Right.
But does that answer your question?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd like to switch gears a little bit here. Make sure I don't forget. We have a conference coming up.
Oh, right.
That's right. March 18th is the, there you go. Your advertisement right there. March 18th, we have the 8th annual University of Florida's UF Law's e-discovery conference. And I'd like to pose a question to you in connection with that conference, really a question posed to me to pose to you by Sheila Grilla, which is, what would non-attorneys, especially paralegals, get out of attending that conference?
Well, I mean, you know, I think the UF conference was originally aimed at, let's make sure all of our graduates are, you know, up to speed on e-discovery if they graduated years ago before the course was offered, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, the content of this is using e-discovery during the litigation life cycle. So it's going to be, you know, as if it's aimed at attorneys, it's aimed at attorneys who are going to be supervising and delegating tasks to their entire collaborative team. So we're going to have a panel on short messaging apps. Okay, attorneys, yes, need to be thinking about that, but paralegals are going to be the ones that they're asking to go figure out how to find a service provider, how to get that collected, how to practically boots on the ground, you know, get what we need from that data. So that's the first one that springs to mind on this, but we're also talking about, you know, search. So if I'm wearing that litigation support paralegal hat where merits counsel is asking me, find me this grouping of documents, well, merits counsel I work with has me. Other merits counsel out there has their paralegal team and their lit support team. So learning all about search, learning about how to set up document reviews and make them better, those are the tasks, and that's the job responsibility of paralegals, especially paralegals who are elevating themselves to litigation support, which is not just, I am going to be, and believe me, every paralegal task is so essential, but going beyond just getting this in the right format to file with the court in the e-filing system, which most attorneys can't do, so they need it. But also just learning the review software, and wouldn't it be great to be able to set that up and set a review team going and support them so that, yes, their eyes are on the document doing the substantive work, but you are supporting them in that. And the UF conference will teach everybody how to do that, give everybody takeaways, every collaborative member of the team. So not just paralegals, not just attorneys, project managers, service providers, sales people, everybody in the e-discovery industry this conference is for.
Yep. So the conference this year, again, March 18th. Suzanne, obviously one of our speakers, and one of the
Gators, go Gators.
There you go, a double Gator and a member of the planning. Right, so a double Gator, a member of the planning committee, and one of the speakers. The conference is virtual, as it has been since its beginning. This year, however, it's entirely virtual. Every year before, we've done virtual and live, and this year it's free for all. You can find out more information and register at ufediscoveryconference.com. So for anybody who's interested, again, ufediscoveryconference.com. Now I'd like to turn, yes, go ahead.
I told one of my colleagues when I was sharing it yesterday, I said, it would take you months, if not years, of practice to have the issues that are going to be discussed in this one day come up across your desk for you to learn it as you do your job. But you can get it all at once in one day at the UF conference.
There we go. I would like to turn now to our last topic of today, which is, what would your ideal e-discovery platform look like? Right. And I know you've done your homework.
I just said, wow, I'm going to get a chance to say all of this. And I don't know if I can do it in 3 minutes, George.
You've got more than 3 minutes. I don't cut you off in 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. So I first came up with some pain points. And then I came up with some ridiculous wish list items that, maybe my children, when they're practicing e-discovery, will be able to have. But, so just autosave of coding and notes. I try to tell people, save as you work, save as you work. But what happens is people get used to their MS Word saving for them, and they just get in that habit. And then I get the call of, it refreshed and I wrote all of these notes into the text box, and all I can do is say it's the software. And I don't like having to say that. I like to be able to have a problem solving session. But another wish list for a pain point is appending notes to a text box field when you're mass editing. So if I want to make a note on a grouping of documents, I can't, because I think, well, the attorney comments may already have notes, and so I would be overwriting that if I mass edit notes. Now, I have solved that by creating an entirely new text box field, but the thing is, if you work long enough, you're going to start overwriting your own text box field and think, did I write something about one of these before? So I wish that we could just append notes somehow in text box fields. So the ability to expand and pop out in large panels and panes on a coding layout, or in a place where you're creating a search, so that you're not having to like scroll and scroll if you want to resort things, and click and drag is nice, but I'd like to just be able to pop out that entire, I want to pop out every single pane. I want to be able to think about my conditions and my fields and my sorting all at once, and not have to click from pane to pane to pane. Another thing is, and I have this down here as, oh, you don't have my list. I don't have my list, but multi-monitor and multi-function capability. So if I'm in a document and I say, I want to add a new field, I can add choices while I'm in the coding layout, but I would like to be able to go to the place where I'm going to add a field and stay in my document and not have to lose my place to go make a field to continue working. I want to be able to pull over to this monitor, pull over to this monitor, and work in my field creation area and in my document area at the same time. Saved field sorting. One of the great functions I like to provide, or the services I like to provide to my Merits Council, is that when I create a save search for them, I make the list that pops up for them. I anticipate their needs on what they would want to look at in a list. It's a pet peeve of mine to get a save search created with just doc ID, and to the point that I've made a standard field selection on all save searches in the workspace. But if I could have several saved field sorting, and not have to go back and remember, and I guess I could create save searches for this. I'm thinking of a workaround as I talk about this, but where for different functionalities, depot prep for Merits Council, there's going to be certain things they want to look at. They may have had a separate coding layout for their depot prep, and they're going to want to look at certain work product metadata fields in that one. Or, you know, when they're doing QC of doc reviewers, they're going to want to see who reviewed it and how they coded it. Just the first level review coding save sort field. So those are my pain points that I wish there were workarounds for. Is it okay for me to just spurt all this out?
Keep going.
Without having conversation? Okay. My wish list, which I don't know if there's a way to do this, but there are so many creative minds out there. Automatic Boolean correction suggestions. So sometimes I have human error. I mean, oh gosh, can you imagine? I don't look like somebody that would make a human error, right? And I'll create a Boolean and I'll have typed out this beautiful Boolean syntax, and then error, you know, like your search has erred, and I have to go back in and say, oh, where's my parens? And, you know, if it popped up and said, your search has erred, did you mean to put an in parentheses in this part of your search with a little highlighted parens? And I could just say, yes, rerun the search. And then I had said to you, simultaneously running keyword searches and DT searches, because they come up with different results. So if there was a way to run them simultaneously, so I don't have to make two searches, right, to compare and contrast, and then have the system identify the differences with an explanation of why, technically, why they're different. And then I can substantively decide which search is better. Touchscreen capability. You know, we're talking about that. How I might just want to rearrange my screen when I am rearranging fields. So say I'm looking at my long list of fields, because that's how my mind works. I love rows and columns. And the workflow that I have decided on for that moment is that, say I need to compare MD5 hashes and sort by MD5 hash, and it's on the 20th column. If I could just go there with my finger and drag that column over so that I don't have to buy a bigger monitor or scroll back and forth on the screen, or just to be able to swipe. You don't even need to click and drag, just swipe your screen. And then I would love to be able to use my stylus and start to write into the filter box. You know, I'm going to write into the filter box what I want instead of having to type. Oh, that's where I was going to say the stylus, where I could, the recognition of my handwriting, a lasso tool with your stylus to move things around on the screen, some sort of super OCR where we could get a handwriting sample from the custodians and then feed it into the system, so that, because George, you and I have actually talked about this before, you might not remember, why does my iPad in my GoodNotes app recognize my handwriting, but at work, it's not recognizing these people's handwriting? And it's because it's learned my handwriting. It knows my handwriting. I just have two more. Autofill in search and filters. So I find that autofill makes me have aha moments of, I did not think of that. So if I'm starting to type a word and I get suggestions, it could expand my thought process. So even if I'm just filtering, if it would give me suggestions, say I want to search in the filter of the extracted text, for example, that might help there. And then voice recognition and collaboration. So my final request is, if Iron Man has Jarvis, why can't I have my own AI like Bianca, where I can say, Bianca, I would like to create a search that excludes these 3 terms but has these 3 terms. Will you please do that for me? Yes, Suzanne, I will get right on that. Would you like this to be Boolean or whatever the other expansion search you were telling me about on the pre-call? So
Yep.
That's my list.
Well, I can't promise delivery of any of these capabilities tomorrow, but we'll see what we can do, right? You have gone above and beyond in terms of your preparation of a wish list, setting a new bar for others to try to cross in the future.
If you don't have a dream, how are you going to have a dream come true?
There you go. So thank you. Suzanne Clark is Discovery Counsel with eDiscovery Co-Counsel, and will be joining us again on March 18th for the UF Laws eDiscovery Conference. Thanks, Suzanne, very much for joining us. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Our guest next week, March 5th, will be Damon Goduto from Lineal, where he is a partner. Thanks again, Suzanne.
Thank you, George.